Well, this 26th of April, the year 2024, thank you very much for commencing your day with us as we analyze the current affairs, question what we must question, and interrogate the systems, just in the whole objective light of ensuring the country moves forward. Lady and gentlemen, still on the day list this morning as we conclude, just a quick, response and your remarks on the front page of the Standard. Nuden, you had something to say.
Yeah, all I just wanted to was point out something about the law, or on the law.
Yes.
He talked about the agreement was entered into during a political season, and it was a political agreement. Now, whatever you deposit in court is never going to be a political promise or political agreement. That's why I told you it's a court order. And there's this notion that you can disregard court orders. Now, you see, like your favorite meal, a court order never expires. So one day someone will pick it up and you will be charged for contempt. Now, in understanding why the doctors are actually the way they are right now, I'll take you straight to Article 41 of the Constitution of Kenya. It talks about labor relations. Now, you see, every person has a right to fair labor practices. 2A says to fair remuneration, which they're crying for. B says reasonable working conditions, which they're crying for. C, to form, join, or participate in activities and programs of a trade union, which they are doing. D says to go on strike, which they are doing. Now, two things. A, B are in the CBA. Now, in B, they're talking about how their working conditions are in a sorry state. I saw a photo the other day on X about a doctor's quarters where they relax as they wait for calls. And that's Nairobi County. It had bed bugs. Is that according to you reasonable working conditions? Now, you need to understand what doctors, how they work and how their pattern is. Someone clocks in the morning, let's say right now, or at 8 a.m., they go up to 5, 6, or 7, they go for a rest, come back the whole night, they're on call again. This same person you're telling now...
Is it?
Yes, that's what those interns do. Because I've taken time to understand and interrogate their issues. I have met up with some, and there's one who's personally close to me who has told me all this information. So at the end of the day, you listen to what people are saying. They just want favorable working conditions, and they want to be paid well. So when you say, I won't pay you 206,000, the next question is, how much are you willing to pay? Because you're being told, oh, right now, things are tight. Now, the government of the day, things are tight for everybody else. When someone says, I'm shippy, now I'm shippy. You look at the largesse that is in this country. For example, let's not go far. When they got into office, there was 800 and something million for the purchase of vehicles. Office of the President, Deputy President, and Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. When you look at, this is simple. When you look at the number of times those people have changed their motorcade, just look at it. You can count how many cars they have changed. Far from that, she talked about the travels. Let me talk about travels. Far from that, you look at the renovations they are doing. So there's money for renovations. And now we are being told that when the cabinet passed that the doctors should be paid 70,000, and you know that is minus tax, eh? When your tax, it comes down to 47,000. So when they should be paid 70,000, we are being told how they are discussing as well packs for the cars. So you ask yourself, so there's money for the cars, but there's no money for the doctors. So you ask yourself, it's not about whether there's money or not. We do collect money. Yes, we're in a crisis right now, but we do collect money. The question is, what are the priorities of this government?
All right. Norden, I want to hear from Thuku, but look, private entities, and let's talk about the corporate, public versus private, and we've seen corporates trying to stabilize as well economically, post-COVID, post the crisis, and most of these corporates are going the contractual way. If you are to stay, you're either laid off, and there's a lot of laying off going on as well, and then this contract basis of having hired people after the layoffs. Is it anything new then that the government is trying to do the same thing to stabilize in as far as hiring civil servants and dealing with the doctors at this point in time? Are they just trying to also minimize what they're terming dealing with the situation economically as is?
The biggest question is, as the reason as to why we used to have, or rather we have permanent and pensionable, like I told you, is for job security.
Right.
All right. And every government out there tries and helps people get employment. So when you put it at a contractual basis, now the question is, how will that contractual basis look like? Already getting employed in government is hard. All right. So you ask yourself, what will be what will be the gist behind the renewal of that contract? Because at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, will that affect performance? Of course it will. There are those who are saying performance will go up, but I can tell you for free, it won't. Because at the end of the day, there's some security that comes with that job being permanent and pensionable. And the pensionable part is what really makes sense, because the gains they get from working for government, be it the servicing alone, be it education, you get. So at the end of the day, will these things be part and parcel of the contractual basis? Those are the questions you need to understand. But when you come out and just say, you know what, moving forward, we're changing this, have you consulted? Have you talked to stakeholders? Have you talked to those who are employed? So at the end of the day, it's more or less like it's abrasive. She talked about the negotiation aspect of where you talk. But when you come, you already have a stand, and my opinion doesn't matter. It's like lip service. I talk to you, but I'm just listening. At the end of like, are you done? This is the resolution. You either take it up or forget about it.
All right, Tuko.
Okay, Anki. You know, in fact, I want to take it further to where Wakili, to the same Article 41 that Wakili talked about labor relations. You know, he's just reading what suits him. But if you go down to Article 41.3, it talks that every employer has the right to form and join employers' organization, F, to participate in activities and programs of an employer's organization. Further down, you find that also employers have the right to determine own administration, programs and activities, and also to organize. So, even what Waziri is proposing, because what I'm saying is, for example, as a person, I would definitely support permanent and pensionable basis. But you see now it is a discussion. It's a discussion.
It's a proposal, yes.
Yeah, it's a proposal. Yeah. We have to discuss it. And it's one of the options we have of taming, you know, the excessive weight bill. Now, you know, when Wakili talks about court orders, we know court orders are subject to challenge from those involved. So, court orders are not cast in stone. In fact, we have, like the Supreme Court recently, you know, they passed this order about LGBTQ and what have you, and same-sex relations. But you see, the government, or there are some lawyers who still, despite it being a court order, the Supreme Court and issuing a court order, there are plans to approach the court with a view to reviewing such.
Is that appeal?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, because it's what they are ruling, you know, it is not consistent with our culture and all of you. Then you find even Mheshimiwa here saying, actually, we are seeing appointments left, right, center. Don't be ambiguous. Don't be vague. Which are these appointments? You know, the government has a right to bring on board people it believes will help it to serve Kenyans better. So, I just wanted to challenge Wakili on what he was saying here and tell him court orders can be allied, you know, they can be faulty, you know, they can be challenged, and that is exactly what this government is saying. And me, I'm saying this not because I'm not sympathetic to the doctors, but I sit at the apex of our party, the neck. And if I cannot speak for my party, if I cannot speak for my government, I have no business being there. So it's not that we don't understand. We have a manifesto to implement. And as the president said, there comes a time we have to tighten our belts. You know, let's avoid this business of just saying, oh, I don't know this is happening. I don't know we are buying these vehicles. So what? You know, there are some things that have to be done.
All right.
You know, so when you are making claims, make the claims, but table the evidence. You see? So let's avoid this business of just making claims. You know, we are just hyping the public.
Is it true, however, Honorable Member of the County Assembly, is it true, however, that there are renovations that have been done, figures are a bit high, based on what was used to construct the building vis-a-vis what is being used to renovate the building? Is it however...
Which building are we talking about?
Bunge Towers?
Yeah, Bunge Towers. You know, I think you can just repeat that. You can repeat that statement.
It was 2009, the proposed amount.
Yeah, from 5 million
to 9.
When did it start?
14 years ago.
Exactly.
All right.
It started 14 years ago.
State House.
The issue is this.
Yes.
we are a country that operates under laws, written laws. The thing they should be telling us, if there are renovation in State House, tell us here, tell Kenyans here, this law has been floated. Right. But you cannot tell us here, no, the Office of President bought these vehicles. These are done according to the budget. The budget goes to the National Assembly where they are the people's representatives. The thing is this, let them tell us, all right, this has been done, these laws has been floated. Okay. But we cannot come here and say, because State House was renovated. Do you know one thing, Anki? Excessive wage bill has, you know, the one thing, and even these MCAs, yeah, my colleagues here can agree. Okay. The one problem counties are grappling with is excessive wage bill, and such that you find that the current budget is, you know, taking a lot of money as compared to development kitty. So it's a matter of balancing. It's a matter of balancing, right, and we have to challenge those who are making claims, right, to prove their claims.
Right, and I agree with that. And especially I want to encourage my panelists to substantiate a number of things. Use statistics. Let's also share numbers and compare, as my desk will as well. Nasra, before I hear from, of course, Bernard here, you have been challenged. You are the one who actually said that doctors ought to be, you know, taken into consideration, just like the government is taking into consideration what they feel is necessary, including trips, and perhaps you need to substantiate, according to Thuku here, your presentation.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to say here, Mheshimiwa Thuku keeps moving goalposts. So on one hand, you can't say that court orders can be challenged, court orders can be challenged, and things are changing rapidly before your eyes here. I'll start off with the appointment of, since he wants me to be specific, I'll be very specific. 50 CASs. It's declared unconstitutional by the court, yet we are busy fighting for their appointment. So you can't say, on one hand, political statements should not be considered legal, and then you go ahead and want to appoint illegal. Now, I'm just saying, like, when we talk about these things, we need to also look at the history of conversations. So similarly, doctors need to be approached with care, 1. 2, we now have a flooding disaster, yet we are still talking about spending 1 billion on renovations for State House. Are we really sensitive to the plight of our people?
Is it illegal?
The issue here is, if you're talking about not having finances and your people are the ones who are your masters, you should, sir, first serve your people. So how is the renovations a priority and not your own people? That doesn't make sense to me, because on ground,
please let her finish.
On ground, sir, you have to be aware that we are all elected by our people. And if we're not sensitive to the fact that these people are suffering, just yesterday I went to Madare 4A and 500 families don't know where the next meal is coming from, yet they read the news and the priority for the state is renovation for State House. 1 billion shillings, which could be going to saving lives. And on the back of that, there's a crisis with doctors. Could we also appeal to our emotional intelligence and humanity to understand that legal issues should be consistent across the board, and processes should also look at humanitarian issues? And that's why the opposition was actually the first party who spoke out about a national disaster crisis that is on government to actually be assisting. And to date, I'm happy to be, told off, but I mean, the opposition made the first humanitarian statement about a flooding crisis when the priority for State House was renovation.
But of course, we had the voice of the government as well on it yesterday. But let's see this cartoon. I know you want to speak very quickly, Bernard, but there's a cartoon that's relevant to these conversations. Kenyans are very talented, and they would speak in different ways. And even as you pick in, Bernard, you could start by interpreting that cartoon as well on the screen. Bernard, word.
Right, thank you so much. I would wish to also mention something. My good friends here have for some time now been mentioning, going back to the issue of renovations and also the question of priorities as far as the government is of concern. I think to some extent it is fair that we be objective to the people that we represent. We should not, and I started with saying, let us say when we can and when we cannot. And I think to some extent that the things that we are highlighting, for example, we are comparing the renovations of State House and maybe the employment and of our doctors and also civil servants. And I think it is important that we compare in terms of, for example, the budget. You cannot compare the budgetary allocation for the renovation of State House, which is around 1 billion, to the amount of resources that will be required for the civil servants and also for the for the doctors.
How much are the doctors asking?
For the long term. For the long term, I would want you to
okay.
I would want you to look at it long term. Secondly, you should also factor in how frequent does State House need to be renovated, and therefore, in as much as we are holding the government to account, which I really respect and which I must agree with, it is only fair that we are objective, that we highlight the issues that we think that will also help elevate, or rather contain our situation. Specifically about the question of construction, that is my field, and I can tell you that it can actually cost that, but as we compare that to what is on the other side, be it the civil servants, be it the doctors and what they are requesting long term, we need to do the right calculations. As far as maybe this is of concern, I see
the cartoon?
the cartoon. I see there is someone there in the legal field, maybe a graduate. This is the legal civil. Yes, it could also be legal. It could also be legal. There's also the question of the servants here who are saying that they are old and experienced. So I think it's a question of young versus the old, in my understanding, and it is now a question of, is the government likely? In my interpretation, are we considering the young people into the job opportunity, or are we considering maybe the old who might now be moving out? And as I conclude, I would want to say this is now, when the government is talking of contractually based basis, it might affect these people who have been in the job opportunity for some time. And these are the ones who are trying to argue that we have the experience, we have been doing this for some time. But now remember, we also have a very serious challenge of employment from those who are coming out of our institutions.
Yes. And
we must now try and factor both. So my closing remark, as far as maybe this specific discussion is of concern, is as government, and also as we criticize the government, let us be objective. Let us highlight the issues that we know that will affect the country in the long run. Not simply we highlight, the State House has allocated 200 million for lunch. Now that's a big issue. That let's focus now on that which will bring a permanent solution. Let us now focus on that which will help our doctors go back to work, because even if you compare that budget with what the doctors require, those two will not really add up. Thank you.
All right, Nuden.
Let me
first, please also remember to interpret that cartoon for us.
Yes. I'll do it. Let me move first to facts and not riddles. So the first thing, he talked that court orders are subject to challenge and it are right. Now, let me just do some free legal opinion to him. Until a court order is vacated or stayed, it is binding. So as of today, the CBA is a binding legal document. And the government not following means contempt of court. Second, one of the issues the doctors are talking about the CBA that people don't understand, people just take it all in turns. Do you know that your doctors don't even have a medical insurance? They work in a hospital where there are diseases that they can get, but they don't have a medical insurance. Isn't that something you talk about? Further, when you talk about the payment they need to be paid, for example, the interns, why doesn't Parliament always put this thing in the budget? It's never appropriated. So the ministry now comes in and says, oh, by the way, we don't have the funds. Because you failed to put it in the budget, so how are you going to have the funds? Secondly, health is a devolved function. Please tell me, using figures, diagrams, songs, why does 60% of the money stay in the ministry? Why? Ask yourself a question. Because as per the constitution, which is in front of me, the reason why the national government has work as per health is for policies. But health is devolved. Why can't we devolve health fully? Those are questions we need to be answered. Now, moving to that cartoon there, I've been told it's someone who's graduated from the legal.
Okay.
From the legal
sure.
which is okay. What I see is someone has energy and another experience. Can be interpreted in two ways.
Okay.
For me, I see it can be said this person has qualifications, this one maybe has more experience and less of qualifications, because the talk around town is now that some are actually working without papers. Secondly, can be interpreted as I have energy, but the other person doesn't want to leave. So they can't blend in. For me, I don't believe that we need to have a fight between the young and the old.
Okay.
But we need to have a way where we blend in that if your time for retirement has come, you need to go. So we have to have a scenario where the young people get employed to fill up positions where those who are actually at the tail end of or sunset years of their career. So we have a scenario where, because government can't employ everyone, but we have a scenario where those who are able to be employed, the young people, get a chance to be employed. So make it favorable so that we can replace those who are meant to retire. Because this issue of people wanting to stay in employment like Mugabe can't work.
You know, I'd be interested to know if the numbers written on the clothing has any significance.
I think it's
Tuku.
age.
Yeah, it has. 60 years, 23.
Yes, Tuku, before I get to NASA to also talk on the cartoon, you wanted to respond.
Yes, yes, I did, because my beautiful sister here, Nasa. Thank you. Is completely of them. You know, in parliamentary parlance, in the assembly parlance, we talk of misreading the house. You know, when I listen to my sister, she's talking as if the government had a choice. It has 1 billion here. Do we use on floods or on renovation of State House? I want to inform her the renovation of State House did not start with the onset of the rains. It's something that had started earlier. And there is no question of the government not responding to help Kenyans. The government, and you have seen even the deputy president, is leading efforts to ensure, and even the president himself, they are leading efforts to ensure there is, as you know, practically, they minimize the suffering Kenyans are going through. I tend to agree with my brother here, Wakili, on some aspects. And the doctors have a right to pursue what they believe are justifiable wages. But what would be more helpful, serving or negotiating while still attending to Kenyans and abandoning Kenyans to die? Which is more helpful? I would support the doctors actually 100% on pursuing what they believe in, but they do it while still attending to Kenyans. Because at the end of the day, what they are canvassing for is being lost of the suffering Kenyans are going through. We are seeing an inhuman faith in the crusade they have, whereas, in fact, what they are canvassing for would get a lot of support from Kenyans if they are doing it while still at their workstations. So, what I want to say is that I've heard even my colleagues here attacking the foreign troops, the foreign trips our country is making, or our leaders are making. Number one, the president ordered the cutting down of foreign travel or unnecessary foreign travel by government officials, including officials in the assembly.
Is it being implemented?
It is. Number two, the president makes, those foreign trips, and there is a lot of positive, impact from them. Kenyans are getting jobs abroad, and the various government ministries are in the process of alleging how Kenyans will be absorbed in job markets in outside countries, in Qatar, in Canada, and other countries. Fine, I know they will say we have not seen benefits, but it's a job or it's work that is ongoing. Finally, the government works with budgets. There is a budget process. There's a budget that goes to the counties and all of you.
Your MCAs also do have a voice in budget.
Yes, in the counties. Okay. But, when we say that money is retained at the headquarters instead of going to a
percentage of money.
Yes, a percentage, like 60%. That goes to inform you that the recurrent, whatever I'm telling you here, the recurrent expenditure is a problem the government is, grappling with. And, it is very easy to say health should be fully devolved. But let's understand one thing. Health, just like the security services, is not something you can, experiment with. So, you realize there is the very great advantage of health staying with the national government.
All right.
These are shared, these are shared responsibilities. You cannot take something, for example, can you devolve security? You cannot. These are matters that need, the grip of the national government.
Right.
And even in where devolution have succeeded, like in the United States, you never devolve some sectors fully. The national government still needs to have a grip of some goings on, because, for example,
as we move on,
yes. Imagine like the northern corridors counties. You have devolved health services, and they are expected to take full charge. Now, what will they do?
All right, because even as we're speaking, the Kenyan is the taxpayer, and I sit neutral on this table, and I just seek answers from your expertise. And I am challenged by the viewer watching this morning to explain to them headlines like fertilizer scandal, and now members of parliament signing motion to kick out Linturi. When it matters health, eyes are on the CS Nakumincha. And when you're talking about renovations, etc., or CASs, etc., the taxpayer cannot be left out. They continually pay taxes. So we cannot continue losing taxes. We have to hold to account who we have to hold to account. And I want to hear from Nasra. At this point in time, if you want to, of course, respond, that is fine. But let's also speak on the actions we take on losses of resources. That would be a question to start with.
Okay.
This front page, that is the front page of the Star on the screen.
Thank you. I'll start with the image. I remember there was...
the cartoon.
Right.
You didn't get a chance to.
Yes. So really quickly, I
Yes.
think what it's communicating that there, if you like, two groups essentially who are either trying to stay in the market as far as the older person is concerned, and the inexperienced one is eager to get into the market. And what I would like to say is, often I find as a big problem, especially in Africa and Asia, is that you find the experienced ones don't want to leave. So we need to find a way to make them work together, but also we need to look at continuity. I think continuity and succession planning is often an overlooked component when it comes to the job market, and this is something that I think should not be looked at two opposing camps, but camps who could work together so that we can all benefit from this. And then on the issue of resources, I agree with you. The public is the custodian of everything. They've put us to... We are actually servants, and I think that's what gets lost in translation on the ground. And I know my brother here said I was misleading the house, but I think what happens often is that when you really think what you're preaching is gospel and not fact, you tend to move goalposts quite often. I will say this. On ground, Mathare 4A yesterday, the community was saying, we feel abandoned. There's no MP, there's no MCA, there's no governor on ground. And what that says, not speeches, but what that says on ground is that our priorities are not aligned to the people we're meant to serve. And I think that needs to be categorical. And coming on to now what you talked about and what your question, I think it's really good that we're starting to see accountability, especially when it comes to scandals on fertilizer. I will not blame the president for electing or proposing certain people to support what his vision is for Kenya, but we have a responsibility in the event these people are not, to the standard, not complying with laws, to be questioned, to be held accountable. So what happens now is the public needs to be part of this process, because the same way these budgets that Mheshimiwa was talking about is key and a priority for the government, the citizens have to have a say in how these things are implemented. And without that, we would be picking and choosing what works for us and what doesn't. Yeah.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, my good brother here mentioned, and I think for a long time we've been talking about, I want to go back to the issue of our graduates who are interns, especially in the hospitals. And I think there is one general...
No, we want to move from that.
Yeah, I know. Allow me to just mention something, because I wouldn't want to leave this behind. I think as a government, we need to come up with a better approach to this specific issue, because you find that you must have been an intern in your specific field, another person must have been an intern in another different field. But my request would be that we come up with a better approach as far as maybe the remuneration is of concern, and also the specific allowances that these people have been receiving for some time. But I know that specifically to this question that you've been able to ask here, about...
we're just looking at it as it is. It's not a particular question, but there's a fertilizer scandal, and members of parliament have signed a motion to kick out Linturi. So by Thursday, 110 legislators from the record we have on the front page had appended their signatures for his removal. Is that an answer to the number of resources we have lost? The former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, had publicly said in his tenure, 2 billion shillings would be lost, at least per day. Is it getting worse by the time?
I think, in my opinion, and I think this is very clear, you see, with all that, our MPs are the representatives of the people. Once we can agree, and I think the government, we have been able now to accept that there was a challenge with the fertilizer issue. We have had farmers raising the concerns. And as a government, and this has been mentioned before, whenever we are able to identify that a certain person has not been able to deliver, it is only fair that we look for better ways of resolving the issue. The fertilizer that was distributed in our areas, now we are, it has actually costed us more, because now we are talking of how we are going to compensate the farmers, and we must make sure that such an issue does not repeat itself in the future. And therefore, I think it is only fair that these representatives in our member of assemblies and also member of parliament, the department or the Ministry of Agriculture, the representative who is Honorable Linturi, we can admit that he was not able to get hold of the issues as he should have. And that is why I think we need to make sure that we get a right person in place to be able to take charge of these issues. Yes.
Well, for me, you see, it's very unfortunate that we have that fertilizer scandal, because that means one thing: the farmer who bought that lost money. 2, the farmer who actually put that in their shamba has been able to have a situation where now there'll be no produce. You know, we have affected our produce going forward. And the government is key on saying that we want to stop importation of certain foods. So how will we do that when we have such a scandal? It's not just about whether he should go home or not. You see, heads have to roll, because this is not the first scandal. Remember, we had the 10 billion edible oil scandal. What happened to it? Who took, who was in charge of it? You saw, there was nothing that happened. You get? So at the end of the day...
When you say nothing, Nude, you know, there's need to follow up the process. There was an expose.
Substantially, there was an expose.
Yes.
There was, the person who was head of the ministry at the time.
Yes.
They were shifted from that ministry to that ministry. So you tell me, did the heads roll there? It didn't. Now with the Linturi, now we are saying we have a situation where if he's removed from office, something has to happen after that, at the end of the day. He's liable to it.
The question would be, are the corridors of justice, to start with, failing Kenyans? No. How many times have we had such expose from the media, gone into the hands of the EACC, investigations done, people apprehended, brought in before the courts, and almost inconclusive? Are you taking so much time, I'm talking to you as an advocate, to actually interrogate these issues to full justice? And do we ever recover resources is the question this morning, even if he leaves office.
Now, this is the beauty about your question is, I'll give you an example. I always tend to contend that most of these institutions, the ODPP, the EACC, most of them are not independent. And I'll tell you that.
Are not independent.
They are not independent, I'll tell you for free. Let me give you an example. I'm an advocate, so let me speak what I know is true. Let me tell you, for example. You remember there were certain cabinet secretaries right now who had cases pending in court. Before appearing for vetting, the cases were dropped. With nothing to show as to the reason why you dropped them. And the
they
charges...
said there was no substantive
let me get there, okay. Let me get there.
All right.
You see, the problem we have is that proximity to power means that a certain case against you will never be followed up. And that's the truth of the matter, and we have to be honest with Kenyans. Can I speak?
Of course.
Yes, can I speak?
Gentlemen, I'll come back to you. Just let him finish.
Let me tell you something. Yes. The problem is that, and this is why we've never even won the war against corruption. The war against corruption is that if I belong to the current regime of the day, if I endeavor to do certain acts of corruption, there's no single day Subaru will be at my gate. And that's the truth of the matter. But those who feel that they are in the cold, they are always susceptible to be carried by Subaru. And that's the reality. You see, we cannot fight corruption where we weaponize it. In that, those who are close to me are protected. But those who are far end up having the law taken against them. So if you ask me, for example, what will happen to Linturi after this? If at all it will go through, because at the end of the day, it's something you have to understand. He's an MCA speaking right now. but you'll be mistaken to think he belongs to the national government because he is defending the national government as opposed to devolution. Someone saying that, hey, you know what? Some things need to stay with the national government instead of fighting for devolution. You get? And that is my problem. We have 3 arms of government. When I hear elected people say that I belong to government, you're in the opposition, we have 3 arms of government. Legislature in itself is an arm of government. So you have a problem where those in Kenya Kwanza, they feel that we are in government. As Emil, you're supposed to check us. They forget that legislation, they forget that oversight and representation is part and parcel of your duty. He's an MCA. So ask him whether he has oversight. He's supposed to do oversight. But when your biggest duty is to defend national government, then there's a problem. And that is why I'm telling you, the reason why we have this issue is because most of these independent offices are not actually independent. And the question begs is, why are they not independent? Is it because they do not control their own funds? Is it because, you know, he who physically controls at the end of the day? So we ask ourselves, why haven't we? Because we have to have institutions. And how do you make institutions strong? By making them independent. In that, in as much as you are close, you are bosom buddies with the head of the state, for example, even if you take tea together every other day, if you're found to be capable of an offense, you should be charged. But as we have a scenario where people were cleared so that the vetting process should go on and they got appointed, that should tell you something. The first day I saw that, I knew we have a problem. So the question about Fertiliser, he might get, the members of parliament get their way or not. Because you also have to understand one thing. They are elected, but they have a party leader. And in these circles of those elected members, there's 2 things they say. Respect the party leader and have a party line. And look at, for example, during the finance bill in parliament, most members of parliament voted for it. Then months later, they start saying, oh, by the way, ile kitu tulipitisha tu kusoma, kuna kitu tu kusoma, because they had a party line. And someone who went against that voting, for example, Wamshomba, she was told, you are against the party. You have to have a scenario where a member of parliament, someone I vote for, an MCA I vote for, has to realize that they're representing me. If you're an MCA and all you do is clap and chant for a governor, that is the problem. Because now you have a governor. I'll give an example. The last example, as he takes over.
Right.
You have a governor, for example. I come from Nairobi County. I am the saddest man in this county. We have
One of your MCAs is here.
you have a county where we have a governor who doesn't know what he's doing. It was Nairobi, will work. Now we are sliding, we are floating, we are sinking, we are drowning. And the many audit queries are being asked. My members of my MCAs are wondering, what are they doing? Because at the end of the day, who are you representing? But you have a governor who will come during the address and say, you know what, we're doing housing. Na kila mtu patapata nyumba. So that means you've already corrupted those fellows. So we need to understand where we need to make these institutions strong and independent. If not, then we don't need to have those assemblies.
Tuku, you're supposed to be speaking, but even as you're picking, let me just bring it to the table.
Yes.
That even as we highlight, the ESCC, number one, in the stories that we have highlighted, has come out very strongly, especially this week, to high-profile investigations. We have seen Mwangi area making headlines. We've seen, of course, Ukuri Atani, just the other day, and his family members. There's probes going in, but I'll come back to Nadine on that matter, saying they are trying to, they're looking at being compromised. Thuku, you're one of the MCAs who's being put on the spot for clapping and chanting for the government, rather than supporting devolution and the people who elected you to position.
I would explain that, but you also, Anki, allow me to respectively say you need to look at the time you allocate us, because Wakili is taking 7 minutes.
Sometimes you take a lot as well.
You're actually wasting your time by saying that.
It is well taken
Anki,
in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anki. Now, let me inform my brother Wakili here. I'm an MCA.
Right.
My party leadership has given me another role to represent my colleagues in the party's neck, where I'm the chair.
Right.
And when you are in the neck, you know you are also part of passing and deliberating on the wider party manifesto and its implementation. So it has to be properly internalized in your mind, because you cannot defend something you don't understand, and then you don't deserve to be there. If you cannot defend your party leader, if you cannot defend your party's manifesto and constitution, you should resign and someone should come there. So if that is what is being mistaken for clapping for my party leader and for my party's manifesto, I think I don't have any apologies on that. But let me say this. As an MC, as a leader in the MC's leadership in my party, I've been part of canvassing for the Watford and for the county assemblies independence. And through my small influence, in fact, our party leader, who is also the president of this country, have agreed, my party has agreed and actually supported the establishment of Ward Development Fund, the establishment of financial autonomy for our assemblies. So, my brother here should be well informed. I'm doing a lot for devolution in this country for my colleague MCAs. Then let me say this. You know, Wakili is talking of people having their cases removed. We've not just added into Kenya yesterday. We have been in this country, and we know the Jubilee regime, the Jubilee party which we were part of, weaponized political. They made, this, they would say we are fighting corruption, but they weaponized the fight against corruption to settle political scores.
Please be more specific.
Yes, I want to be very specific and very open. As long as you are a supporter of President, now the President, he was then Deputy President. As long as you are a supporter of Deputy President William Ruto, you are a bad person, you are a corrupt person, everything bad was brought to you. And we saw it. I am an MCA and I was an MCA then. And I'm telling you, the bad effects or the cruel effects of supporting President William Ruto were trickling all the way to us. They were doing all manner of things to us, even on the ground.
When you say they, unfortunately, I have a viewer who has no idea. No,
the Jubilee government, that's what they were doing. So the first duty that the government had to do, the president said, the Yala River killings, they must stop. And I wonder whether Wakili is supporting that. This political persecution.
We are on. I understand where you're coming from, and honourable member, I'd love to give you an after, but we'd avoid too much deviation.
Yes, exactly. I was just responding so that we don't get misled.
Because members of parliament,
no. The issue is this. Yes. Nobody had their cases withdrawn or dropped so that they could pass, through the parliamentary vetting. It was just that injustices which had been committed against innocent people couldn't stand in the face of the law.
I'm still with you. I'm still with you. The question here is, have we seen cases concluded? And at this point, I don't ask whether it's Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, leaders in power who have been questioned in terms of maybe their wealth declaration, maybe some scandal or stolen, public monies, apprehended to conclusion. Being an MCA in oversight, have you been interested to know if the courts either failed us or the EACC or things just disappear in the air?
I think because those are independent institutions,
all right,
they should speak for themselves on why, on the merit of dismissal of cases or pursuit of the same. But let me say this.
Right.
We say we should always be fair. The rule of fairness and natural justice. The president said those who have been selling this fake fertilizer must be arrested. Farmers who have lost their money through the purchase of fake fertilizer must be compensated. Now, investigations are going on.
Okay.
There is this pension by Kenyans. I just look at my sister here. I say she's looking at me badly. She should be lynched, even without giving her due process of the law. With me, I cannot be part of that. If there are people who believe there is something wrong with what the ministers have done, let them table it. For example, they are doing well, they are tabling it in parliament. Members of parliament will go there and debate the merits and demerits of the case. It's upon them to decide. In fact, at this panel, we cannot apportion blame because we don't have the benefit, we don't have the evidence with us here. We are just relying on what we are reading on in the media. So the issue is this. We need to be fair to everyone. If it was on any of us, we would want to be heard, we would want justice served on us. So let that go on. So the issue is this, as I take it back to you.
Yes.
Everyone must know the place they occupy and where they are coming from. I said here as we started, the president has said we must avoid discussion. We are just saying things, doing things so that we can be clapped for. No, we have to take firm decisions. Look, the president here said we have to subsidize.
I thought we're sharing time.
Yeah, we have to subsidize production rather than consumption.
Right.
People started wearing sufurias on the head here, but the government stayed tight. Look, the effects of that can be seen. The positive effect of that can be seen. The UNGA has come down. They cannot tell you of that. They just want to hammer the are negatives. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nasra. Before I hear from Bernard, so that we quickly...
I think for me, the key question would be, have we seen cases concluded?
Good question.
Is anyone in jail? So far, I've not seen that. So until they say seeing is believing. So if I see it, I'll believe it. And I think on that regard, that would be my stance for purposes of the prosecution, the real change. It's easy for us to have grandstanding on camera. Let's see. If heads roll, if people are reprimanded, and industries genuinely see leadership being held accountable, that's when we can genuinely see that things have changed. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, so I will not dwell on what was said. But what I will say is, touching on my colleague here, Nordin, who talked about at county level. And I think you can't be a champion of devolution and say health is important when the Constitution has already said health is a devolved function. So the first and foremost thing, I think, there is confusion with leaders. Are you paying attention to the laws which are supreme? The Constitution is our supreme law. And if the Constitution is saying health is devolved, yes, you might have an opinion that health needs to be anchored at national, but the Constitution is what is above all of us. So we need to comply. We can't pick and choose when we take laws and when we don't. It's okay to have a transition, but it's important to follow the letter of the law. And then in terms of devolution and parties and EACC, I think I would say the MCA is the most important leader on ground because they have access to the grassroots. They always should, anyway, be the first responders on ground, right? And I also think that it would be naive for us to say party position does not affect implementation of actions on ground. But what I am going to encourage my fellow MCAs is when you have a party position, even if it's internally, question it if it conflicts with your role under the Constitution. I don't think we do that enough because ultimately the people who elected you are the ones you need to serve first. So I think that gets lost in translation. I think we can do better. But ultimately, as envisaged in the Constitution 2010, I think the MCAs are not getting the respect they deserve on a ground capacity, and that needs to change, but it starts with us as MCAs too. Thank you.
I'll come back to that respect conversation. Yes? Bernard,
yes,
before I take the soapbox of the day.
Thank you so much. I would wish to start with responding to my sister here. One thing about because I didn't get a chance to respond, especially to the issue of the health being at national and county level. Let me just say one slight thing. My good brother here, Mheshimiwa Tuku, mentioned about it, a part of it being at the national level. And I think the long-term solution is we could not, or maybe the government could not just transition at once, because the counties, remember, had not handled such a responsibility before. And so I think an approach is, the best approach is a gradual transition, so that with time we see how the county can be able to contain the situation, and as we move on, we work towards achieving full transition and 100% responsibility to the county. I think to the issue of the motion in the National Assembly, yes, or Parliament, I would wish to first start with saying that I think we have a president who accepts whenever there is a mistake. And my comment is, I think as Kenyans, this is a before we've been challenged or we've seen institutions of government, whenever there is such a challenge, everyone goes behind a person, defends them, even when we know that there has been a challenge or that person has not used the resources as they should. But for the first time, we have seen a leader who has come forward to admit that there was a challenge, and they are now discussing, or now we are discussing, how we can be able to contain the situation. And this is now maybe compensation of the farmers who might have lost their resources as far as this is of concern. And therefore, I think this is one thing that we can admit, one thing that we can celebrate, that at least as leaders, we need to learn to accept whenever there is a challenge so that we can serve our people better. And as a person, I think that is one item that I can thank the leadership and the government for, that yes, we can admit it is not everything that is right. Sometimes mistakes happen, sometimes problems happen. And it is not wrong for a leader to accept them when such has happened. Second thing, now, I've seen also the ESCC has mentioned about the several investigations that are happening. You mentioned something like the governor, and they said, actually, I think it was yesterday, they said that these investigations are not starting today. So whenever you see arrests happening, it does not mean that we just did it today. Some began like 10 years ago, and they are saying even today we are already having some investigations whose results might be again seen 10 years from now. And it is upon us, let me come to that.
We are with you.
Yes. It is upon us not to politicize these things. Now, my request, and my good brother here, Wakili, mentioned something about independence of these institutions. For us, as far as we are of concern, and as far as the Constitution is of concern, these are independent institutions. Let them bring the information, let them do investigations, let them make sure that we have seen, my sister has mentioned about, that we have not seen arrests at the end of the
anyone behind bars.
Yeah, anyone behind bars. That is the responsibility of ESCC. That is the responsibility of the arm that you are talking about, that is the judiciary. It is not the responsibility of the government. And therefore, it is my request. You also mentioned something to do with budget, and you questioned whether they're independent or not. That it is their responsibility for them to make sure that they are independent. The government has tried to make allocations to them. But after that, you cannot again challenge the government for the fact that these institutions are compromised. For example, if you are a leader, maybe I'm a leader, I'm elected, like my sister here mentioned, that she said that it is our responsibility as leaders that whenever you feel that the party position is going against your objectives, that you should stand firm and challenge that party position. And therefore, I want to use the same words and say that these independent institutions, ESCC, be it the judiciary, it is again their responsibility to stand firm should they feel that maybe the government or any other people are going against their intentions. Because of course, that is likely to happen. So it is upon them to be firm. Let them bring them. Let us make sure that we get these leaders behind cases, behind bars. We have seen the government has admitted that there have been some challenges. It is upon these institutions to make sure that that they protect their independence.
All right, allow me to take a very short breather. But starting as a Kenyan, and I like that Nasra brought it on board, respect for the members of the County Assembly on the ground. The ground here, I'm supposing you mean the electorate. Is it the Kenyan?
Yes.
Okay. Kenyans are watching this morning, and I appreciate that you also have a legal, cap that you wear together with Wakili and Nurdin. And we start by understanding the position of an MCA. In fact, conversations have come in and analysis that we don't need you guys. That's what they have said at some point. They have questioned your competence, your knowledge and understanding of your position, your professionalism, the impeachment that your purpose, they say you push, and your use by perhaps selfish leaders to make chaos. We've seen drama in some county assemblies, yes? So the question of how you carry out yourselves in the county assemblies have also been raised by the public. We'll come back with the soapbox, the newsroom, and a detailed conversation on your representation in the county assemblies after this break.